Bloomberg Audio Studios. Podcasts, radio, news. This is the Bloomberg Surveillance Podcast. Catch us live weekdays at 7 a.m. Eastern on Apple CarPlay or Android Auto with the Bloomberg Business app. Listen on demand wherever you get your podcasts or watch us live on YouTube.
I don't want to turn this into a history lesson with Javier Blas, but I can do that. The wide acclaim for his book of a few years ago, The World for Sale, Money, Power, and the Traders Who Barter Earth Resources, encyclopedic on what we see within the Middle East and hydrocarbons as well. Javier, I want to narrow down to one little image, and this is in southwestern Iran, where British Petroleum or its precursors agreed with the Shah of Iran in 1901 to set up what became Abadan, which is the refinery site literally back to 1912. Is our goal to take out those kind of oil infrastructures?
I don't know what is the goal of the United States of Israel. We have seen President Trump making an argument for several goals in Iran, from the nuclear power program to overthrow the regime, to destroy the Iranian Navy. But it's not very clear, other than I think that President Trump wants all of the above with Iran. I don't think that the Iranian oil can be taken. Without involving ground troops. That is something that both President Trump and the White House have said that there is not the intention of the U.S. government. So I don't think that the Iranian oil can be grabbed. No, not at all.
Javier, if I look at the arc of the oil business now, I was really quite taken yesterday by the size of Iran's oil production, even now beleaguered, as compared to across the Gulf, United Arab Emirates. Is a general myth, is Iran oil larger than we perceive?
Yes, we kind of have this thought that Iran is on his knees because of years, decades actually, of sanctions. But Iran has been very effective in bypassing those sanctions, which have been at times less than enforced by successive American governments, including the current Trump administration, where Iran has been able to export billions of dollars of oil to China. But Iran is producing currently the most oil. When you put all the oil liquids, so that includes crude oil and some things that we call natural gas liquids and condensates, when you put all that number together, it comes to more than 4.5 million barrels a day and is the highest in 46 years. So yes, the production of Iran is larger than what typically is recognized even inside the oil market.
You know, Javier, prior to these attacks, the oil market was in good shape in the sense that we were awash in oil. We are awash in oil. We have a U.S. shale revolution. So my question is, what might the impact be to the global oil market if this drags on for 5 weeks from now? Because I have to tell you, Brent crude up 8.5%. I thought we might even see it spike a lot higher than that.
Well, you have asked me, say, 20 years ago, 2006, and you have described to me what has happened over the last 48 hours, which, if I can summarize, goes more or less as follows. The United States and Israel launch a coordinated attack against Iran that kills the supreme leader and much of the Iranian establishment, and then bomb multiple targets. Iran responds in fashion, hitting with missiles and drones multiple countries across the Persian Gulf, including Saudi Arabia, the United Arab Emirates, and traffic in the Strait of Hormuz effectively comes to a halt. And you tell me, what is the price of oil? I don't know if, I think that probably my price of oil at that point starts with a $200, $150, $175, $200. Here we are up, looking at my Bloomberg screen at $79 Brent, $72 WTI. I mean, we were much, much higher at $125 only a few years ago, 3 years ago, when Russia invaded Ukraine. So far, the reaction of the market is quite measured. And that speaks about the amount of inventories and the weakness of the physical market. Also, there is if anything is going to happen in the oil market right now, beginning of March is the perfect time of the year. We are heading into a spring, low season for oil, plenty of time to recover before the summer demand starts, is when refineries typically shut down for maintenance, annual maintenance. So that's the background. But you are asking what happens if this goes as President Trump, I think he said overnight in an interview with the New York Times, what happens if this goes for 4 or 5 weeks? I'm really concerned that the market at the moment is not really thinking 4 or 5 weeks. It's thinking about more like 4 or 5 days. If this goes at this pace for more than 4 or 5 days, I think that we need to move much, much higher than we are today.
Across America, Javier Blas with us this morning from Queen Victoria Street. We welcome all of you around the world. Again, one of the best ways to get us is a new digital expression. Subscribe to Bloomberg Podcasts out at YouTube. A lot of people, Alexis, they don't even look at me. They just listen to YouTube.
That's all you need to do.
It's a trick.
They feel comforted.
YouTube.
They're comforted knowing it's on.
Another question for Javier, and we have a headline, Alexis,
I want to get to this headline, So we know that President Trump said that we should expect more casualties in this war, and we are seeing that number rise. Now, 4 U.S. service members have been killed in action, this coming from the U.S. Javier, I want to ask about the Strait of Hormuz. We know 1/5 of the world's oil comes through that critical strait. Iran says they're keeping it open, but for all intents and purposes, when tankers try to get through and are being shot at, can we say the Strait of Hormuz is closed?
For big tankers, certainly is closed because no one is taking that risk. There have been some few tankers that they are taking the risk. Overnight, we have a couple of tankers that cross, but those are the small tankers, typically full of refined products. But the big, what we think about a super tanker, 300 meters long, the strait is closed. It's just not only what the Iranians are saying, is the perception of risk, and is the fact that the insurance is very hard to get to cross the Strait of Hormuz, unless in the next few days, and I will say if by the middle late of the week, the Pentagon cannot say categorically the Strait of Hormuz is open and safe, and we can we are making that promise. I think that the White House is going to start feeling the heat of the oil market.
You mentioned, Javier, in your important essay, Mr. Putin of Russia. How will the Chinese respond to this from where you sit? China
buys more crude oil from the Middle East than any other country in the world, so they are very exposed. They have 2 benefits. There's a lot of blacklisted sanction crude from both Iran and Russia that it was floating around in tankers with no buyers. China, for the next few days and potentially few weeks, can mop up that surplus, and I think that China is fine for now. And China has been building for the last few years a significant strategic petroleum reserve, similar in size to the American one. So they have tools. But certainly, if a country is exposed, is China. The question to me is the country that is going to feel the pressure earliest is going to be India, because it buys a lot of energy from the Middle East, also from the Persian Gulf in particular, and it doesn't have that same kind of surplus that China has. So India potentially in trouble.
We hope to call upon you again, Javier, this week and into March as well. And of course, he's writing for Bloomberg Opinion. His essay is out this morning. Javier Blas off of Queen Victoria Street. Oil prices will get nasty, but this won't be a shock. We thank him for his support. Stay with us. More from Bloomberg Surveillance coming up after this.
You're listening to the Bloomberg Surveillance Podcast. Catch us live weekday afternoons from 7 to 10 a.m. Eastern. Listen on Apple CarPlay and Android Auto with the Bloomberg Business app. Or watch us live on YouTube.
Henrietta Treyz now with a domestic brief with Veda Partners. She's been a huge advantage to Bloomberg Surveillance with her perspective. Henrietta, I used all my computer power to keep up with Henrietta Treyz. And off of the Detroit Free Press, I note that the president defeated the vice president in the election 49.7% to 48.3%. Can this kind of war, an Iran war, which Kamala Harris calls regime change war of President Trump, can this war shift the close elections of America?
We're actually about to find out. Tomorrow, there are primaries on the Democratic and the Republican side, and the House and the Senate up and down the state of Texas. And I think it's an exceptional proxy. They're exposed to oil. They're exposed to the military. They're exposed to the national conversation about which kind of Democrat should replace Kamala Harris and Joe Biden, what kind of Republican should replace Donald Trump, and which direction the parties want to go in. That race is going to be fascinating, and turnout is through the roof. They're turning out more than the presidential. At this point, last I saw, over 1 million Democrats had voted and just shy of 1 million Republicans. So it's a turning point for engagement, which is exactly what we've heard from members like former President Obama saying, if you want to change this, you've got to turn out and vote. And that's what's happening.
Give us the dynamics of the Democratic Party from what I'm going to call a more visible, more modern left, maybe Vice President Harris of California being an example of that, and bring it over to Jack Reed in Rhode Island as well. Is there a measured Democratic Party that would be in support of the events in Iran?
Jack Reed is one of the institution's most, esteemed members at this point on both sides of the aisle as the leader of the Armed Services Committee and foreign policy. And his direction is unparalleled at this point. And his stature, really can't be replaced. I remember when I worked on a campaign in Rhode Island many years ago, he was still, even then, at the front of the race. The differences between what Democrats are thinking right now suggest that the War Powers Resolution is very likely to fail later on this week. The Senate will vote on Tuesday and the House maybe on Thursday. And it looks likely to me that the president has at least John Fetterman in his side from Pennsylvania to vote and make it look bipartisan. And the only thing I could say is that there must be something in the water in Kentucky, because the Republicans from Kentucky are the only ones who are willing to actually stand up to the president and say, hey, the American public has a negative 21% rating of the president's handling of foreign policy. And unfortunately for the president, that makes it the third least popular agenda item, followed by the economy, which is underwater by 24 points, and the cost of living, which is underwater by 30-something points. So the president's top initiatives, tariffs, foreign policy, whether it's Venezuela or Cuba or Iran now, is extraordinarily unpopular. But the Republican base continues to be extraordinarily tethered, with the lone exception of Kentucky.
If the War Powers Resolution were to pass, though, Henrietta, if it were made law, Congress hasn't done that, I guess, since during the Vietnam War, right? As a check on executive war authority. Would that be the last time that was enacted?
Alex, I think this is such a fascinating conversation topic, because here's the deal. You have the War Powers Resolution, but even the vote is optically problematic. The president is out here waging a war in the Middle East with, different allies exposed now, whether it's Kuwait, whether it's the United Kingdom and their military bases being attacked. This is going to be expansive. So the War Powers Resolution, just having the vote, signals that there might be duress and distress domestically that the president's going to be reined in by. And so there's this legal question of whether the War Powers Resolution even needs to pass with the veto-proof majority, or if simply passing with 51 votes in the House and the Senate is significant to say, hey, the president's lost the ship here. He doesn't have the backing of the U.S. public, and he might lose some of his support abroad. That's the fascinating dynamic. So, of course, our base case expectation with, 100% odds should be that there are no veto-proof majorities for this legislation. But it's the message that's sent by even holding the vote the White House is pushing back on.
Give us quickly here, Henrietta, and we'd love to have you on later this week as well. What is your estimation of a length of this conflict, this war? It seems to be we're out weeks. I feel like the beginning of the Civil War in 1861. What's the appropriate political length of a war that's okay?
I think the American public is very pessimistic that this is going to be over quickly. There's been some interesting polling showing 30+% of Americans think that this is going to last for years because of our institutional muscle memory around the Middle East and engaging there. The plurality behind years is that this will last for weeks. What disturbs me a little is that the president was calling, I think 10 reporters over the weekend and seemingly workshopping different durations, a couple of days, 4 or 5 weeks. There is no near-term end plan, and no end plan really that I can divine, given that we've extracted regime change. The former leader is dead. And there is escalation and now 4 military deaths of U.S. servicemen. So the American public believes that this is going to extend into weeks at a minimum, and I'm inclined to agree with that.
A valued conversation. Henrietta Treyz of Veda Partners, thank you so much. Stay with us. More from Bloomberg Surveillance coming up after this.
You're listening to the Bloomberg Surveillance Podcast. Catch us live weekday afternoons from 7 to 10 a.m. Eastern. Listen on Apple CarPlay and Android Auto with the Bloomberg Business app. Or watch us live on YouTube.
Kathy Jones joins us, Chief Fixed Income Strategist at Charles Schwab. Is the fixed income dynamics now, Kathy, would you call it contained, or is it waiting for a little more panic?
I would say it's contained. And I think this is partly due to the fact that the markets started to position for some event in the Middle East and Iran over the last week or two. So we saw yields drifting down, particularly at the long end of the curve, ahead of the weekend. So that partly has mitigated the response here. But I do think that there's an element of now that we're here, now that things have started to happen, of the market sitting and waiting to see how prolonged will this be, what will happen with energy prices, how will that flow through the economy. So right now, I think the fixed income market is just kind of holding steady, positioned for maybe further conflict, but not panic.
Kathy, the next Fed meeting, it's going to be upon us very soon, in 15 days, right? They kick off that March meeting, March 17th, 18th. If what President Trump is saying is true, this attack against Iran could be going on well through the Fed meeting. With oil rising the way it is and inflationary pressures now full throttle, what does the Fed do? Might we see a preemptive move to hike interest rates at this March meeting?
This seems unlikely to me. I think this Fed is very deliberative right now, has been on sort of indicating it wants to be on hold for a while. And when you get a conflict like this, they tend to look through, say, the spike in oil prices and say, well, is this going to be a temporary phenomenon that, yes, lifts prices, pushes the inflation index up, but also maybe slows the economy in ways that hurt demand. And so I think from an economist's point of view and from the Fed's point of view, probably just a cautious wait and see is the more likely outcome. They have to assess whether financial conditions are really going to tighten as a result of the conflict in the Middle East. And I think it's early days. I don't know if we'll know in the next 15 days or so if that's going to be the case. But for right now, there's enough calm in the markets, I think, for the Fed to hold steady.
The last time we spoke, Kathy, we talked a bit about the deterioration in private credit markets, which has continued. Is there concern here that this is becoming more widespread, that this is now becoming an issue we just cannot, turn a blind eye to?
Yeah, I think so. It's something we've been talking about for quite some time. Our concern is that the credit quality, the underwriting quality had deteriorated. And, in private credit, you get lack of transparency and illiquidity. And so our concern is not so much that it spills over into the public market in a credit quality way, because we're still seeing pretty good credit quality throughout investment grade and high yield. What we're worried about is sort of the spillover effect from the search for liquidity. So, when an investor can't get out of something that isn't doing well, they may sell something else that they can get out of that does provide liquidity. So kind of keeping an eye on that. Right. We've seen credit spreads widen a bit, but so far it's fairly well contained.
One of the great announcements here after a sterling career is that Kathy Jones will step aside at Charles Schwab. It's a retirement, well-deserved. I could ask her about the concert piano tour she's going on here in the next 6 months. Kathy, what's the number one thing across the span of your career at Schwab that clients get wrong about capturing yield and hopefully total return? What's the biggest thing we screw up?
Oh, I think it's a tendency to just look at the yield and not look at everything that contributes to the yield and look at total return. It's easy to go, Schwab has this wonderful website. You can go on and you can pick out a bond and you can search by yield. And there's a lot of other factors that you need to take into consideration in order to get a good total return. And so the one thing is dig a little deeper, take your time, get some advice if you need it. That would be my advice to investors in fixed income.
Kathy Jones, thank you so much. With Charles Schwab. Stay with us. More from Bloomberg Surveillance coming up after this.
You're listening to the Bloomberg Surveillance Podcast. Catch us live weekday afternoons from 7 to 10 a.m. Eastern. Listen on Apple CarPlay and Android Auto with the Bloomberg Business app. Or watch us live on YouTube.
Earlier, we heard for the first time from senior U.S. officials since the U.S. war with Iran was launched over the weekend. And Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, Dan Keene, said the U.S. is now sending more troops to the Middle East to support its operation in Iran as the conflict there widens. We want to bring in Ethan Bronner now. He is the Israel bureau chief for Bloomberg News in Tel Aviv, joining us remotely. And Ethan, can you paint a picture for us? What are things like from your perspective there in Tel Aviv?
Well, good morning to you. Well, they're pretty complicated. People are running in and out of bomb shelters much of the day and night here, but at the same time, there is a great sense of hope and optimism that with the United States joining Israel, that the Islamic Republic could actually be defeated and that there could be a different society, different government there. Don't forget, for the Israelis, Iran is an enemy because Iran declares that Israel shouldn't exist. It has armed and funded militias around the region to attack it. And it has even set up a clock inside of Tehran declaring when the Jewish state will disappear. So it's a pretty big deal to have the United States and, to have President Trump and Hegseth and all these people sort of talking about ongoing future battles. So I think that people are willing to put up with it. But it is people have been killed here and people have been harmed as well. So it's a tough situation all around.
Ethan, I can only imagine the feel on the ground. What exactly are the Israeli people hoping to see from Prime Minister Netanyahu?
Well, I think they, Prime Minister Netanyahu's relationship with this country is long and complicated. People were very upset on October 7th, 2023, at the failure of the government of the security services to protect them. He has been trying to reverse that view and to say that actually what happened on that day will be the beginning of a renewal of Israel's strength. He did defeat Hezbollah. The Syrian regime under Assad has fallen, and so on, and Hamas has been pushed back. So in many ways, I think they feel that he is making good on that. We'll see now. This is the ultimate battle against Iran. He is feeling, I think, pretty triumphant at the moment, and he does have an election coming up within the next 6 months or so. If this goes well, I think there's a reasonable guess that he will not lose the next election.
And earlier, I'm sure you heard that press conference with the defense secretary who said this is not Iraq, this is not endless, wouldn't put a time frame, of course, on any sort of an exit strategy. But talk to us about what Israel is doing right now, because I know they began a new broad strike really in the heart of Tehran a few hours ago.
Israel has been sending hundreds of sorties over Iran. I mean, for Israel, this is kind of an opportunity that they don't want to miss to get all of various IRGC, the Revolutionary Guard, the intelligence of the Iranians, the military structure, the whatever they can about the ballistic missile system, whatever they can about production of missiles, and whatever they can about nuclear weapons technology. So as long as the U.S. is standing by its side, Israel is doing everything it can to push back the capacity of the Islamic Republic to have any kind of military quality to it. And yes, this is certainly, as long as the U.S. is helping and standing by, Israel is full force in this battle. Absolutely.
Ethan, what if on-the-ground resources look like for the Israeli people? How is the government perhaps supporting its constituents during this time?
There is constant sirens, and the IDF spokesman gives several press conferences a day and talks to people about the need to go into their safe rooms and into bomb shelters. There is extra money being spent on calling up reservists. They've called up about 70 to 100,000 reservists. Right now, of course, businesses that aren't functioning are getting support. Since Saturday, everything is closed, schools, businesses, for the moment through Wednesday night. And people, except for essential services, are asked not to be running around much. And I think for the moment, there is patience with this. But it's just been a few days, right? So imagine if it's a few weeks and more people get killed. It's hard to know what the impact will be.
Well, we're going to be continuing to check in with you. Ethan Bronner, Israel Bureau Chief for Bloomberg News, joining us live from Tel Aviv. Please stay safe, and thank you for that perspective this morning.
This is the Bloomberg Surveillance Podcast, available on Apple, Spotify, and anywhere else you get your podcasts. Listen live each weekday, 7 to 10 a.m. Eastern on Bloomberg.com, the iHeartRadio app, TuneIn, and the Bloomberg Business app. You can also watch us live every weekday on YouTube and always on the Bloomberg Terminal.